Good morning, people of YouTube. It's time to rise and shine and get your cup of coffee, get your pen, get your paper. Let's bust out this 11-game slate tonight. I am Choppadong. You can follow me on Twitter at Choppadong. You can also follow me in the VIP forums of the DFS Army, the best place on the internet to play daily fantasy sports with the content and the coaching that we offer in real time to help you build your lineups and become a more competitive player. This is just one avenue by which we do it in breaking down a slate. We have a ton of information to cover today. I can't even begin. When I was taking notes looking at this slate, I'm just going to have to fly being that it's 11 games. So, like I said, grab that pen, grab that paper. Let's rock and roll. When we look first, well, a couple of tips first. Some of these lines you'll see over here. We don't have a Vegas line in the Nashville game. We don't have Vegas lines out in the Winnipeg game, and etc. But you don't really need those. If you keep score my way and keep your rankings and your tabs, you can still pick out the good matchups. And sometimes it's better not to have that Vegas bias. That Vegas bias for me is typically used when picking goalies because I trust Vegas more or less, but I don't necessarily trust Vegas to tell me if it's going to be a 2-1 game or a 6-4 game or something like that. They can tell me who's maybe going to win the game, but not necessarily where the goals are all going to come from. That comes by looking at the other page that I look at, the skater or the team stats, busting up who the top shooting teams are and the top scoring teams are over the last 4-week period. That has really been a pretty telling mark and put me on some good games to help me put you guys on the right games. You also need to focus on trends. As you start tallying up like I do and you start paying attention back again to this page, shots on goal and fantasy points allowed, you start ranking those teams like I do. I try to tell you those rankings. You're going to start to find how teams slide up and down in the rankings. You know, a team may have been ranked 4th in shots on goal, and now they're all of a sudden 20th. Well, what's happening? Well, they're not shooting anymore. You'll also see things like how it shows up which teams have an up and down style and which teams are more shot suppression or point suppression styles, tough defensive teams. And that can help tip you off when a really good shooting team goes against a shot suppression team. It'll tip you off to who's maybe going to win that battle. I can tell you Buffalo, Dallas, Toronto type teams tend to be up and down. And when they're playing well, not only are they shooting a ton, but they're giving up a ton of shots because they're more of a transition team. As you open up in your shooting, you're going to see a lot of counterattacks go the other way. That rebound kicks out, boom, team goes the other way. You're on your heels defensively, and you're giving up shots on the other end. Sometimes that's a good thing for up and down type teams. Sometimes it's a bad thing for teams that get a little out of whack and do things a little bit against their nature. Sort of like in basketball when you see up-tempo teams versus grinder teams, you know, bang, especially in the NCAA tournament like we've got going on right now. You see those teams that try to slow the pace down, and when they get forced to keep up the tempo with a run and gun type team, a lot of times they get out of whack. They're not playing to their style, and they can't control the game, and therefore they end up losing. So jumping in, that's just a trend to watch. As I'll try and bring that up as I go through today. But I've got some other little bitty notes. First off, Buffalo and Columbus. Buffalo is on a back-to-back. They've won 2 games in a row. Columbus is a minus 212 favorite here, which leads you to think Bobrovsky, and that's probably not a bad way to go. But right now, Buffalo is shooting the puck. They're allowing shots. They're scoring points. They're allowing points to be scored. This game tends to probably feature some goals both ways. I love Buffalo's youth. I can tell it's usually going to come out of O'Reilly, Eichel, Kane, those types of guys. You know, one of my favorites right now, value play, is McCabe on defense. The guy's been pretty darn steady. Columbus, I don't know who to peg right now. I don't see any of these players that are really running hot. So if I want to run Buffalo tonight, which I really think I kind of do, I can't take Bobrovsky as my goalie, which kind of hurts because he's definitely a solid goalie tonight. I don't know. I don't see enough to make me think that Columbus is rolling good enough to support him if Buffalo puts a few pucks in the net. So Nashville, and he's fine. Don't get me wrong, he's fine. But I will probably have some Buffalo skaters tonight, and therefore I can't use Bobrovsky personally. Nashville and Boston. This is an interesting one. Boston is not on my radar tonight. These guys have really slipped. You want to talk about a trend. They've been one of the top 2 or 3 fantasy point scoring teams over the past 4 weeks. They've all of a sudden got dropped all the way down to 12th. When you drop from 3rd or 4th down to 12th, you've hit a cold streak. It should show up in guys like Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak, these guys that are typically your point scorers. Can they explode in any given night? Sure, but here's why I think that this trend will continue at least for one more night. Nashville may be on a road back-to-back, but Nashville's won 4 in a row. Nashville is hot on the heels of the St. Louis Blues, who are playing very, very well and in their division this year, right now, and they're fighting for playoff spots. None of them want to wind up facing Chicago in the playoffs, and so they're fighting tooth and nail down the stretch. Nashville's going to give it everything they've got, and if Boston's a little bit cold, it isn't going to work out very well for Boston tonight. Not to mention the fact that Nashville's the 7th most scoring team, over the last 4 weeks, and that intensity is definitely playing out. They've scored points, they've been shooting pucks, they've been playing really, really well going back over the past 4 weeks. So, granted, Boston's a powerful team. I just don't like their spot tonight, and I don't like that recent trend of the last week or so where Boston's cooled off a little bit. I think that's a bad matchup tonight. Running down into Detroit and Carolina, this is an odd duck. Usually when I see these teams and I know they played last night, I start thinking, they've probably played. This is maybe one of those home and home back-to-backs, and I love those types. This isn't. This is a home and home again back-to-back for this. These teams played in Carolina last night. Everything I'm looking at, I didn't watch the game personally, but that's everything I can see. This must be a makeup game for something that I wasn't paying attention to. I will say that Detroit owns the head-to-head matchup in the last 10 games with a 7-3 record against Carolina. So even though Cam Ward's a big -180 favorite, Cam Ward sort of sucks. He gives up goals. I don't necessarily know if it'll go 4-3 or 3-4 or what, but I don't mind taking some of those hotter Red Wings tonight as a secondary offense. You could probably even take some Carolina Hurricanes, but largely I'm not really on the game, to be quite honest with you. Ottawa and Philadelphia, really isn't a lot to say about this game. Both these teams are, kind of scoring, kind of not scoring. They're just kind of flat. It's not a great matchup. It's not, for an 11-game slate, it's not going to hold my attention. Winnipeg and New Jersey, again, this is a game I'd kind of like to target. It's a little bit sneaky. Winnipeg is on a bad trend as far as shots on goal. They were one of the top teams shooting pucks on net, and now they've dropped all the way to 17th, below halfway in the league. There's something there. I know they've scored some points, but there's something there. They're still the 3rd most powerful point. But usually when your activity drops off, so does your point production. It's tied. It correlates very, very well. And so I'd be looking for them to come out flat. Now, New Jersey is typically a shot suppression, a defensive team. They haven't been for going on about 3 weeks now. So I don't know what we're going to get out of this game. Again, secondary offense. I'm not stacking either side of it. It's not a green light situation. It's kind of a one here, one there. These young guys over here in Winnipeg, your second line, Lowry gets a little bit of power play time. These types of guys are in a pretty good spot. Treba, Morrissey, these guys are okay. And you look over on the New Jersey side, and Palmieri, I love this guy night in and night out. He's way too cheap still for what he produces. He gets you about 4 Draftkings points, it seems like, every night he plays. Who else? Don't really know. Don't know the team that well. I know Schneider gives up goals. I know Hellebuck is... God, that guy can implode with the best of them. New Jersey's lost 3 in a row, and if you remember going back last week, New Jersey was on a 10 or 11 game losing streak as well. So it's like they popped the win and then went right back to losing. So that does favor Winnipeg, even though Winnipeg's shots are down. I don't really like their spot as much as I typically do. Not a terrible spot, but you're going to have to make up your own mind on that one. Dallas Stars and the Montreal Canadiens. Dallas has won back-to-back games, but Dallas is another one who's trending down in shots and fantasy points, both allowed and for themselves. So to me, that's an indication that this team's just been putting out some duds. They just have had a lack of energy. They're not playing their style of game. They're not really. That's kind of telling me that this isn't a game to be on. Montreal has showed flashes of getting a little bit better, but they haven't. Pacioretty's about the only guy I would take out of this team, but they just don't show enough consistently, and they're not exploding. They're kind of going from 2 goals a game to maybe 3 goals a game, and that's supposed to be an upward trend. I'm just not really buying it, to be quite honest with you, in Montreal. Sorry if I've been calling them New York. Their logos always confuse me for whatever reason. But the -175 does have me on Carey Price. I'll watch that line move throughout the day. Carey Price is not a bad goalie tonight. Montreal has been trending up. They were like 25th, 26th in fantasy points. They're up to 18th. So with a team like Dallas that tends to give up points, They're not lately, but they tend to give up points. Montreal might be in a sneaky spot, but again, on an 11-game slate, it's just not clear enough for me to really want to roster up my teams and take 2 skaters or so out of that game. Florida and Toronto, no Vegas line in this one. Florida's on a back-to-back. This is a game to target, though, too, because when you look at these numbers, Florida shoots the puck the most out of all of the teams in the league. Toronto gives up the 3rd most shots. That's a plus. Toronto is 22nd in shots on goal. That's really weird because Toronto usually shoots the puck like Buffalo does. So that for them to fall all the way down into almost a bottom 10 offense and shooting the puck, something's wrong with Toronto right now. As a result, their fantasy point production is down. They're just kind of, this is the kind of game that can go both ways. Toronto can go back to their old form. Florida's been playing pretty well lately. I'd be looking at a Huberdeau, a Barkov, Trocheck, some of these guys. Marshall Shots is on a freaking phenomenal tear lately. So these are games that I'd be looking at, teams or players, skaters I'd be looking at. Washington and Minnesota, talk about a tale of 2 different teams. It looks like Washington is starting to rebound off of their lull, and it looks like things just can't get any worse for Minnesota. Washington's won 4 in a row. Washington's up in shots on goal. They were down in the 20s. They're now up to top 10. Their points are coming up with it. Their fantasy points scored were down in the 20s. They're now up to 16. They're trending in the right direction. This is what we knew Washington could do and what they would be. They're 7-3-0 in their last 10 meetings against Minnesota head-to-head. That's a bad sign for Minnesota, who is still a top shooting team in the league. They rank 5th. But they're 22nd in points scored. They were 4th just a couple of weeks ago. Falling from 4th in fantasy points down to 22nd sucks, man. And you've seen it in their box scores. They've just been bad. I won't be touching any of the Wild tonight. I don't know, that I don't like the 5 over-under total. I don't like that Braden Holtby is only a -115. If I was a GPP guy, I might take a shot on it. But to be honest with you, it's just a game where I'm starting to get into Washington again as they start trending up. They're high priced. We've been waiting for indicators that we should get back on this team. This might be where we start going. Los Angeles versus Edmonton. Edmonton's won 2 in a row. They're kind of the favorite. This is kind of a flat game, other than the fact it's worth noting that Edmonton is now, over the last 4 weeks, your top fantasy scoring team, believe it or not. That came out of the blue to me. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know it. Some of you guys that are paying more attention, help me out in Slack in the DFS Army and make me privy to these situations, because you're missing out if you haven't been rostering a few of these guys here lately. They 7-3-0. LA owns the head-to-head here, so that's an interesting matchup. But you can't probably go wrong if you've got a hot team that's scoring the most points across the league in rostering a couple. I'm not saying stack it up and down. I'm saying make sure you maybe get a piece of this offense. These late games are low totals. Anaheim and Vancouver. Vancouver at home plays better, much like Arizona does, but Vancouver still sucks. They give up the most shots on goal. They give up the most fantasy points. Anaheim right now is a -180 favorite. I'll talk about Bernier in a second. They are 4th in shooting pucks. They're, shots on goal. That's trending way up from being down in the 20s. This is coming out of the blue as well. And they're 4th in fantasy scoring. That's coming up from down in the 20s. That's coming out of the blue as well. For a team to rocket up the scoring from bottom of the league, middle of the league, all the way up to top of the league, and then they're facing the shittiest team in the league, green light, green light, green light, green light, green light, stack them up, both formats. Anaheim is on fire, and there's no reason they should be slowing down. As far as Bernier, he might be my goalie on the night because of the -181 total and the fact that he's 8-1 in his last 9 starts. So this is another one, like I was saying, as they open up the shooting. I don't know what hair they got up their ass, but Anaheim starts shooting the puck like wild, and all of a sudden they're giving up shots. So it's not like Vancouver's going to be completely quiet tonight. I just don't think Vancouver can beat Anaheim. Last game of the night. Got to do it in a minute or less. New York Rangers, San Jose Sharks. San Jose's imploding. They've lost their last 6, but that number's misleading. Gibson is 5-2 in his last 7. Jones, I'm sorry. They're projecting Gibson for tonight. But here's the thing. This is what I'm getting at. One game in Gibson's, last 7 games, maybe it's Jones. Gibson's in Anaheim. I get those two confused all the time too. 30 seconds or less. Goalie's given up 3+ goals in his last 10 games only once. That means it's his offense that's not supporting him. Get the hell off of the Sharks tonight. I'm not saying take Rangers, but that's not as bad as it looks as far as predicting the win or the loss. It just means that San Jose's been sucking lately. Anyway, Chapadong, follow me on Twitter. Get in the DFS Army. Follow the link in the description. Come talk hockey with us as the season winds down. We got about 5 games left. I'm out.